interpret it.
Yeah.
Music has just evolved differently than I think, because, like I say, with so much that's out there, everybody has so many big influences on all kind of different scale. And, I was kind of able to find my niche of what I thought was good enough, for me to get going and just go from there, And, Matt, had his influences. He wasn't a big Rush fan, but I kind of pushed that a little on him a little bit. And I think it helped him a little bit.
I still like. I like Rush. I listen to Rush periodically. Yeah. I mean, it's just like this. I mean, you learn from this stuff, but you just don't want to just try to copy it.
Well, nowadays, the flavor of the week is whatever you want.
You can. It's a very different world. Just from 5 years ago.
Sure.
You can find anything and hear it now.
No matter what.
I remember hearing, again, just from 5 years ago, I was 19 years old on my way home from work. Working a full-time job, going to school full-time. I got no time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the way back and I know now to be Amy by Pure Prairie League.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a fucking fantastic song. It's not hard rock. It's not. But it's just such a good song. It's well written and it's well performed. And
wasn't Vince Gill in that band?
Yeah. He still plays it live actually sometimes.
Wow.
And we're like, it came on the radio at midnight on like 103, and then goes off. And for 3 years, I was like, well, I don't know what the fuck that was, but that was cool.
Yeah. And you don't hear it again.
Right. And back then, YouTube was so much more controlled, and there was a lot less music you could find online just 5 years ago. And now we can go there and we can pull up something unheard of even 2 years ago. You can find Prince's entire back catalog on there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can listen to it. You can stream it all. You can see the video of him in his weird suit for Raspberry Beret and...
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Oh, the assless...
Was that the clown? Was that the clown?
That's the clown
yellow
suit.
suit he wore with had the ass cut out of it.
I remember in that video.
Like a award show or something. Turns around and Prince's ass cheeks.
Yeah,
right
I remember that.
Was badass.
Damn, I forgot.
Only Prince
about
can get away.
that.
Prince and David Lee Roth can get away with that.
Oh, man.
Well, Prince is one of those guys that doesn't get the respect he deserves. He can just fucking shred.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how shy he was, too. As much as shy he's... When he first started out, his interviewing skills were zip. I mean, he's like a little kid,
Mine's like bad enough.
I can definitely empathize with that, though. It's a lot easier to be a character on stage than it is to sit down and try to talk to somebody.
You better believe it.
Well, it's easier to talk from behind the drums.
Yeah, right.
For me.
Let the drumming talk for you.
Yeah.
Right.
I just want to say thank you and load my gear, and people are just like, oh, and they want to talk to you about stuff, and it's just like, I don't know, because the set's over, so I'm not that guy anymore, and I don't know what his answer to this question would be.
I was channeling really someone else.
We're just...
You get in that zone on stage.
Yeah, you just
get in that, it's like you drive over 100 miles somewhere, you just kind of get in that drive zone. Well, that's the way it is for us, just kind of get in that zone. Then you...
Would it be too cliche if I just started repeating "It's only miles" over and over again?
It's true, though. It's so true.
It is true. You better
a lot of truth to that.
Well, our rhythm section's got to take off. We're going to take another quick break here, and then we'll get some one-on-one time with Mr. Matt Mason, the brains behind all this.
Thanks for listening.
That's when it gets kinky.
Ooh.
All right. Well, peace. God bless.
God bless.
Well, you guys have a safe drive.
Well.
Can you give me a ride home?
Yeah, I think I can manage it.
After a while.
Yeah.
Let's put that on.
I'm going to leave that in.
Edit that out. I was thinking of Ballroom Blitz when he said that. I was like, man, you're playing sweet.
No, I'm leaving
plays sweet.
I'm leaving it the fuck in.
No, that's dangerous.
Everyone's going to have to hear you.
I'm a Ramones.
I love a fanatic.
All right, and we are back on the new Tulsa Sound podcast. So, you've heard from the rhythm section, so now let's get to the lead vocals and the guitar parts. Mr. Matt Mason.
How's it going, man?
It's good stuff. It's always good. So, we'll do the same thing we did with those guys. first we'll start out just what are you using right now, and to do what you do, and then let's talk a little bit about your influences.
Okay. Well, so as far as gear wise, I'm a disciple of all the great classic stuff, of course. And, Gibson, Fender, Ampeg. I've got pretty eclectic tastes in different kinds of instruments. I've always kind of, I love all those instruments for one thing or another. An SG doesn't sound like a Tele, and P90s don't sound like two humbuckers in a custom shop Les Paul either. And so I like to mix it up. I always like to shake it up, different combinations of guitars and different amps and different pedals, and just experimenting, because I have a bunch of different brushes in the just to paint with. You know what I mean? It's like if I'm going to do a gig that's kind of a smaller place, and maybe I'm not going to be able to turn up very loud, well, I'm going to kind of probably take a smaller amp setup. The key is fitting in, being able to fit in. Yeah, there's people that I travel with 2 half stacks and that's it. I'm like, well, 2 half stacks are just kind of impracticality in this day and age, really, even at the bigger shows. And so try to make it easy. Even some of the biggest gigs and stuff I've done on the road, I've had played on the smallest equipment. Your dreams of playing bars with 2 full stacks are kind of dashed, nowadays. But I like Gibson, I like Fender, I like all the good stuff, and I got an endorsement with Zemitis recently. And so Zemitis was a company, in the 60s and the 70s. Tony Zemitis made these guitars handmade for Keith Richards.
They're the
guys from the Faces.
For those that don't know out there, they're the aluminum topped Les Paul shaped guitars.
Yeah, and then he made some that had the shell fronts, and
they're fucking gorgeous if you don't know them.
Yeah, now they're kind of the company's changed a little bit, because it used to be Ron Wood, he wants a guitar, so he'll go over to Tony's house, and Tony a year later call him up, here's a guitar, it's $15,000 or whatever, and he made them for everybody. The first one I ever saw in person was a double neck he made for Greg Lake, and it was $60,000. I was like, wow, this thing is cool, and I started to kind of notice them, and over the years I was like, man, I'd just a fantasy to have an instrument like that.
I've seen them here recently at Guitar House, I think.
Yeah, they've got some at Guitar House, and so I got the endorsement, and I was like, I really want to try to do something a little more custom on the inlay. I had this vision of maybe incorporating something in tribute to Ace and in tribute to my big dog Ben, and some kind of carved top thing. And then, also, like when I played a lot of these acoustic shows by myself, I played a 12-string electric acoustic. And so they make acoustics as well. And so I'm trying to just kick around with them sort of what the options are. The company now is being made by Greco. And, the Danny O'Brien, the original engraver, he's still sort of, they're using his designs, and he's supervising the engraving part of it. And so it's, it's a little bit more affordable instrument. It's still, rather expensive, and hence I'm really grateful to have the endorsement from a company like that. And, so I'm trying to figure out what I want. It's hard to make a decision. There's just so many.
Yeah,
there's just so many, and it's like, well, exactly what pickups you want, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to get that all figured out. And it's like, so that's kind of one thing. And then I've started kicking around with some of these custom jobs, just getting a body, getting a neck, trying to figure out, hey, can I make this cheap guitar and these cheap parts sound good enough to go out there and play and record with? The answer is yes. These are all old-time respected brands. They're still going to be there no matter what. But I'm telling you, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get something that's super playable and super good if you know kind of like where to look and kind of how to think outside the box. When I was little, I wanted a Les Paul because Ace Frehley had a Les Paul, and Dwayne Allman had a Les Paul, and Slash had a Les Paul, and so Paul Kossoff had a Les Paul, and it's kind of like, when I got to where I could play pretty good, I thought I'd get me a Les Paul, so I got one of those, and then next was an SG. I think I still got that, and several different SGs and all this different kinds of stuff throughout the years. And I've been lucky enough that, when I was teaching down there in Tulsa and Owasso, I had some pretty good access to some pretty nice stuff for pretty friendly terms. It wasn't like I had to go out there and just throw down the money. John treated me really good and let me pay it off or whatever. So, I got a lot of stuff that way. And, heck, people just give me guitars now. It's pretty cool, but, So I got, a lot of stuff like that. And I just never know. Like last week, I thought, hey, it's Les Paul's. Les Paul's been gone for a while. Let's get out my first Les Paul. So I played my first black Les Paul. I went out and played that last week. Just kind of a tribute to Les, You don't play it for a while and you come back to it. It's like, I remember what I loved about this instrument before, And I kind of remember some of the things that I liked about it, and then I also remember some of the things that I didn't maybe necessarily like about it. And so,
those are Les Pauls are guitars that I just can't. I've tried many times over the years.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if it's the weight or the... I don't know if it's the build or what, but there's something about them that I love them in that first few days, and then I'm just like,
yeah, right. I get it totally. After I had that first Les Paul for a long time, played a million nights on the road and stuff, I got that first SG, and it was like, man, I can reach this a lot easier, and it's lighter, and man, it looked cool and sounded cool, and I was like, there's differences, subtle differences in all of them, and it becomes kind of diminishing returns. And does anyone need, hundreds of guitars? No, not really. But it's kind of like wearing shoes. You can get by through life with 2 pairs of shoes, but sure is nice to have 20.
I definitely understand that. I've pared my collection down a lot this year, so.
Yeah, and it's like some stuff I might not use very much. Other things are like you got it for a reason, and it works good for this. And so I'm a collector. I'll admit that, and I don't have a problem admitting it. I'm a gear slut, just like everyone else. And where's it really going? I always joke that I could go out there with a $200 PV Bandit 65 from 1984 and a pawn shop special somewhere, and 90% of the people wouldn't probably know the difference, but I would. And it's it's nice to have an inspiration with different things. Different equipment tends to make you play differently. Makes me play differently. Different amp sounds makes me play differently. I know that if I'm playing a big, loud Fender Vibrolux, for instance, at a smaller place, I'm going to have to up my right-hand picking game a little bit, because I'm not going to really be getting a whole lot of overdrive. This is that clean but sort of overdriven sound that, I loved so much when I was hearing those tube amps for the first time on record. You listen to Band of Gypsies and you're like, well, this doesn't sound like my little PV Bandit 75 solid state amp. This sounds like, how's he getting that sound? And growing up in a little town, I just didn't know a lot of people that were hip to, big tube amps and all this kind of stuff. And the music store sure didn't carry a lot of it. So,
yeah,
it's kind of been a long road of experimentation. And, I've taught at a bunch of stores and gotten a chance to play a lot of things at NAMM shows and different guitar shows and stuff like that. And so I like gear. There's no two ways about it. But the main thing is you got to have something to put through the gear.
Yeah,
and that involves practicing and getting your fingers on the on the strings and just working on your attack. I've seen lots of name players play on gear that wasn't their normal stuff, and they still sounded like them. And that's what kind of made me realize, well, this guy's got a back in the 80s it was Ibanez, Steve Vai, Jim, and even then it was $1,000, $2,000, and it's like you're not going to really be able to sound like Steve Vai just buying his guitar any more than you're going to be able to sound like Jimi Hendrix by buying a Strat. That's their brush. They used it their way, and you can use their brush, but you're gonna sound like you, hopefully. So like I said, I try